The divorce papers arrived on the morning of Christmas Day, and the first thing I saw was her family cheering, smiling, and clapping as if they had won some long-anticipated prize. I, Caleb Turner, 41 years old, sat at the edge of the polished mahogany dining table in the quiet suburban house, staring at the envelope in my hands. The smell of pine from the decorated tree mingling with the faint aroma of coffee that had gone cold while I absorbed the shock, and for a moment the room was silent except for the soft hum of the heater and the faint ticking of the wall clock, a normal, ordinary sound in a moment that felt anything but ordinary. Victoria Turner, my wife, had already signed, her signature neat and confident, a flourish that spoke of certainty. Her family around her laughing as if the story of their happiness mattered more than the impact of their actions. And I looked at that scene with a calm that I had cultivated over years of learning restraint, patience, and the weight of calculated observation. I placed the envelope gently on the table, careful not to disturb the ornaments or the little pile of unwrapped gifts at one corner, and I thought back to our early years, the first Christmas in this house, the one with mismatched lights and cheap decorations, the warmth of the laughter that once meant something different. I remembered the weekends spent managing contracts, visiting sites, negotiating with vendors, and making sure every detail of the life I built could support not just me, but the family I believed we were, and those memories now collided with the current scene. Where laughter and cheer were aimed at my perceived defeat, I did not raise my voice, did not reach for my phone to send an angry message, did not let my posture betray anything other than calm observation. I studied the expressions of Victoria's relatives, noting the confidence that came from assumptions, the pride that masked underestimation, and I realized that their celebration revealed more than I needed to know, the gaps in knowledge, the moments of oversight that I could use quietly, legally, and strategically. I went to the sideboard, poured myself a glass of water, and took a slow sip, letting the cool liquid ground me, the ordinary sensation anchoring me while the extraordinary situation unfolded in front of me. My mind mapped every document I had, the savings account details, the premarital agreements, the separate property holdings, and the legal advice I had collected months ago, all quietly waiting for the moment when preparation met opportunity. I looked at Victoria, who smiled at me now without noticing the depth of calm in my eyes, and I felt a steady resolve solidify, a quiet awareness that would shape every move from here forward. The room glowed softly with the afternoon sun filtered through the living room blinds, dust motes floating like tiny stars in the light, and I allowed myself to breathe slowly, appreciating the quiet before the first move, the calm before a shift that was coming, a shift that would rely not on anger, not on confrontation, but on the precise, patient application of foresight, documentation, and controlled action. And in that stillness, I began to plan the first steps that would turn perception into reality, observation into leverage, and patience into undeniable power. After the initial shock faded, I turned to the blue folder resting on the sideboard, its presence a quiet reminder of months of preparation that I had kept out of sight. I, Caleb Turner, opened it carefully and began reviewing each document: bank statements, premarital agreements, property deeds, and account summaries, lining them up on the dining table as the soft afternoon light filtered through the living room blinds, illuminating dust motes that floated lazily in the warm air, and each page told a story that only I could read, revealing a pattern of oversight and assumption that had gone unnoticed for months. Victoria moved around the room, arranging plates and glasses as if the morning had been ordinary, laughing lightly at her family's continued cheer, completely unaware of the detailed mapping of her actions that lay before me. Her confidence and casual celebration exposing the gaps in her perception, and I noted every gesture, every smile, every pause, because even small details matter when the time for action comes. I traced the dates on the resort confirmation emails, matched them with credit card records, and cross-referenced flight times with notes from our shared calendar, seeing how her plans had been woven together, unaware of the silent observation they were under, and I felt the satisfaction of clarity. Without haste, the kind of satisfaction that comes from knowing the unseen has been accounted for. For months, I had reviewed our accounts quietly, monitored correspondence that had passed between us, and maintained detailed notes without confrontation, cultivating a calm vigilance that allowed me to see what others could not. And now that pattern of attention revealed how overconfidence had left her exposed. I reflected on past holidays, the quiet evenings spent planning budgets, reviewing contracts, and negotiating work deals while she decorated the house with careful joy. And I understood how those ordinary moments had laid the groundwork for extraordinary awareness, for the ability to act decisively without drama. As the dogs shifted on the rug, stretching and yawning, I poured myself a glass of water and sipped. Slowly, letting the cool liquid anchor me as I mentally rehearsed the steps to follow, ensuring that every document, every timestamp, and every observation would be used precisely and legally, transforming quiet preparation into inevitable clarity. The room remained calm, filled with ordinary sounds, the ticking clock, the hum of the heater. The muted chatter from the family gathered in the kitchen, but beneath that calm, the alignment of evidence and timing created a silent power that would guide the unfolding of the day. Victoria glanced at me once, her eyes bright with triumph and expectation, and I returned a neutral gaze, revealing nothing, giving nothing, because the weight of preparation speaks louder than emotion ever could. I set the pen down, reviewed the sequence of actions one last time, and felt the quiet pulse of control in the room, knowing that patience, observation, and methodical planning had positioned me to respond with precision when the moment arrived, and that the first move, though invisible to others, would define the rest of the day. The afternoon stretched quietly through the house, sunlight warming the living room as I sat at the edge of the sofa, the blue folder still open beside me, each page a quiet witness to months of careful observation and preparation. I, Caleb Turner, traced the lines of account statements, receipts, and travel confirmations with my finger, aligning dates with her planned absence. Realizing how easily overconfidence had left a trail for me to follow without confrontation, Victoria moved through the house, arranging decorations, laughing lightly at her family's chatter, completely unaware that every action had already been recorded and that the invisible web of documentation placed her assumptions in a framework I could rely upon. I recalled mornings spent reviewing contracts and spreadsheets for my business, nights calculating budgets, and the countless small actions that built a foundation of foresight. And I saw now that those ordinary efforts gave me a quiet power, the ability to act decisively without theatrics while the world remained oblivious. The dogs shifted lazily on the rug, a normal heartbeat in the calm of the house, and I allowed my mind to map the sequence of steps I would take, the timing of legal notifications, the coordination of account protections, all designed to ensure clarity and fairness without needing anger or confrontation. I thought about the years of holidays we had shared, the small traditions, the quiet evenings with coffee and music, and how those ordinary moments had now contrasted sharply with the extraordinary awareness I had cultivated. A reminder that patience and methodical planning could transform what seemed small into decisive advantage. I sipped water slowly, feeling the cool liquid anchor my attention as I reviewed the steps in my mind, noting every opportunity for observation, every element that could create leverage, all while maintaining the appearance of normalcy, the appearance that Megan had expected to control entirely. Each detail, from reservation confirmations to financial account summaries, aligned perfectly with her movements, a precise choreography that required no shouting, no confrontation, only the steady application of foresight and strategy. I glanced at the clock, noting the slow passage of time as the afternoon light shifted and softened in the room, realizing that the first move, though invisible, would set the tone for the day, and that her confidence would crumble naturally when the unseen plan unfolded. The ordinary sounds of the house, the hum of the heater, the soft shuffle of her feet, the ticking clock, blended with the extraordinary clarity of preparation, and I allowed myself a quiet smile at the thought that calm observation and meticulous record-keeping had created a moment where action was certain, timing was everything, and patience had become a weapon more effective than any display of emotion could ever be. Victoria's laughter floated from the kitchen, bright and carefree, and I looked at it with measured detachment, knowing that the rhythm of the house, the details I had gathered, and the careful orchestration of information would guide the day toward a resolution that relied on subtlety, control, and the quiet execution of a plan months in the making, all without a single unnecessary word. As the afternoon deepened, Caleb Turner remained seated at the desk, the sunlight fading gently through the blinds and casting long stripes across the documents he had meticulously arranged. The quiet hum of the heater and the faint ticking of the wall clock provided a rhythm that contrasted with the tension of the day, and yet he remained perfectly composed, reviewing the legal notices, bank statements, and premarital agreements with an eye for every small detail, noting times, signatures, and account movements while Victoria Turner moved about the house, arranging ornaments, setting plates, and speaking lightly with her family, completely unaware of the invisible web of preparation surrounding her. Every reservation she had made, every credit card charge, every flight confirmation was accounted for, cross-referenced, and organized. And Caleb's mind worked quietly to align these details with the timing of her trip, ensuring that the first move, when it came, would be undeniable and precise, requiring no shouting or confrontation. He recalled years of careful planning in his professional and personal life, the nights spent reviewing contracts, budgets, and schedules, the patience it had cultivated, and how those skills translated perfectly to this personal challenge, allowing him to observe, record, and plan without emotion. Clouding his judgment, he sipped from a glass of water, feeling the cool liquid steady his hands, and allowed himself to reflect on the contrast between ordinary domestic sounds, the creak of floorboards, the distant murmur of conversation, the dogs shifting softly on the rug, and the extraordinary alignment of preparation he had quietly built. A pattern invisible to anyone else but complete and effective. Caleb considered the psychology of overconfidence, noting how Victoria's belief in her control, her celebration, and her assumption of his inaction had left clear markers that could be leveraged, not to punish, but to clarify and enforce the boundaries of fairness and consequence, and he appreciated the subtle power of this approach. The day moved forward slowly, and he made small adjustments to the documents on the table, reorganizing notes, checking numbers once more, confirming that each piece of evidence supported the strategy he had devised. The ordinary suburban environment, the smell of pine from the Christmas tree, the muted laughter of relatives, and the soft light falling across the kitchen table, created a serene backdrop for the quiet orchestration of a plan that would alter perception without conflict. Caleb's calm focus allowed him to see the unfolding day as a sequence of opportunities, each one accounted for, each step timed to coincide with events outside the house. And in that calm, he found satisfaction in knowing that preparation, observation, and patience would achieve more than immediate reaction could ever accomplish. Victoria continued her activities unaware, while Caleb reviewed once more the sequence of actions, confirming that documentation, timing, and strategic oversight were perfectly aligned. And as the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over the room, he leaned back, secure in the knowledge that the invisible work of preparation had positioned him for the decisive and controlled outcome that would unfold without drama, but with precision and clarity. By early evening, Caleb Turner remained at his desk, reviewing the sequence of actions one last time, the light from the setting sun casting warm shadows across the dining room floor and highlighting the edges of documents that had been carefully organized for months. Victoria Turner continued to move about the house, unaware of the precise observation that had taken place, arranging decorations, setting glasses, and chatting lightly with her family, all of which provided subtle clues to her schedule and expectations, and each motion was quietly noted and filed in Caleb's mind alongside the corresponding legal documents and financial records. He sipped from a glass of water, letting the cool liquid steady his hands, while mentally rehearsing the order in which notifications and account protections would be implemented. Each step measured and timed to ensure that when the moment arrived, the response would be undeniable, precise, and entirely within legal and ethical boundaries. The dogs shifted softly on the rug, patting their way across the floor without interrupting the quiet rhythm of the house, and Caleb allowed himself to focus on the ordinary sounds of home. The hum of the heater, the distant chatter from the kitchen, the ticking clock, which contrasted with the extraordinary alignment of preparation he had built, a structure invisible to everyone else but complete and effective. He reflected on the years of careful planning and attention to detail, the long nights reviewing contracts and budgets, the patience cultivated through professional and personal challenges. Realizing that these habits had prepared him perfectly for the situation unfolding in his own home. Each reservation, account statement, and confirmation email aligned like pieces of a larger puzzle, and Caleb appreciated the power of silent preparation, the way controlled observation could turn ordinary knowledge into strategic advantage without ever raising a voice or creating conflict. He made subtle notes on timing, cross-referenced transactions, and confirmed that the sequence of actions would produce clarity and control, reinforcing his understanding that patience and meticulous organization often outweigh immediate reactions and emotional responses. The ordinary suburban evening continued outside, neighbors walking past, car headlights glinting on driveways, and the aroma of dinner cooking in nearby homes mingling with the scent of pine from the Christmas tree. While inside the house, the invisible web of preparation and strategic oversight created a tension that only he could perceive. Caleb leaned back, letting the rhythm of quiet preparation and careful anticipation fill the space, knowing that the first move, though unseen, had already begun to shape the day, and that when the sequence of notifications and account protections reached Victoria, the balance of perception would shift entirely, demonstrating the power of controlled action, foresight, and patient strategy without confrontation or drama, and leaving him in full command of the unfolding situation. At 6:17 that evening, Caleb Turner made the first visible move, and he made it so quietly that the room did not notice until the effect had already begun. He stepped into the hallway, closed the office door halfway, and called Melissa Grant, the attorney whose number had been saved in his phone since September. Her voice came through calm and clear, a professional steadiness that matched the folder spread across his desk. He told her the papers had been delivered, the timing, the cheering, the names in the room, and the financial documents already arranged. Melissa did not interrupt. She listened the way serious people listen, not for emotion, but for structure. When he finished, she said, "Caleb, do not argue tonight. Do not explain your strategy. Send me scans of everything, protect the business accounts, and keep all communication written from this point forward." The words settled over him like a level placed across uneven wood. Useful, precise, honest. He scanned the signed divorce papers, the prenuptial agreement, the account statements, the separate property records, and the documentation for Turner Development Group, the commercial real estate company he had built before the marriage began to crack. Every page passed through the scanner with a soft mechanical hum, plain white paper becoming digital evidence, emotion becoming order. In the kitchen, Victoria's brother laughed at something, and her mother made a comment about fresh starts. Caleb heard it through the door and kept scanning. That was the difference now. Their noise stayed in the house. His answer moved through systems they could not see. At 6:39, Melissa confirmed receipt. At 6:44, Caleb logged into the business banking portal and removed Victoria's authorized user access from accounts tied only to the company. At 6:51, he contacted the credit card issuer and froze the joint card from new charges while leaving basic household bills untouched. No drama, no punishment, just boundaries. By 7:03, he sent one message to Victoria, even though she was only 2 rooms away. "From now on, please direct all divorce-related communication to my attorney." It was a simple sentence, but it changed the temperature of the house. He heard her phone chime in the dining room. The laughter faded by degrees, first into murmurs, then into the kind of silence that means everyone is trying to read the same screen without looking obvious. Caleb stood at his desk, hands resting on the warm edge of the wood, and looked at the Christmas tree glowing in the next room. Red ornaments, white lights, a silver star Victoria had insisted on buying during their 3rd year together. For a second, grief moved through him, clean and sharp. He let it pass. Then Victoria appeared in the doorway, holding her phone, her expression no longer bright. "What is this supposed to mean?" she asked. Caleb did not turn it into a fight. He did not perform pain for her family. He only looked at her and said, "It means I finally understood the gift you gave me today." Her face tightened, confused, uncertain, and for the first time since that envelope landed on the table, the room belonged to his silence. Victoria Turner's expression had shifted from confidence to uncertainty by the time Caleb Turner stepped back from the desk. the room still warm from the afternoon sun filtering through the blinds and casting long stripes across the polished floor. He allowed a moment of silence to settle between them, letting the weight of the actions he had quietly set in motion fill the space without a word. The hum of the heater and the soft shuffle of the dogs on the rug providing a subtle rhythm against which the tension became almost tangible, and Victoria's family paused their conversation, sensing a shift they could not yet name. Caleb did not raise his voice, did not gesture dramatically. Instead, he moved deliberately to the window, glanced at the street where ordinary suburban life continued uninterrupted, and considered the contrast between the calm exterior and the precise alignment of documents, account freezes, and legal notices that had already begun to alter perception. He reflected on the months of preparation, the careful observation of routines, the mapping of patterns in Victoria's behavior, and how each seemingly minor detail had been stored in memory and documented meticulously to ensure the first move was entirely effective without confrontation. And he felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that patience had created leverage far stronger than any immediate reaction could have. Victoria's glance flickered toward the desk, toward the folder that had been scanned and logged, and then back at him, confusion and unease mingling in her expression as she began to understand that the balance of control had quietly shifted, that her earlier assumptions about his inaction had been mistaken, and that the invisible preparation he had undertaken had already begun to demonstrate consequences. Caleb allowed the silence to stretch, observing the subtle signs of uncertainty in her posture, the slight tightening of her hands, the pause in her speech, all of which confirmed the effect of measured, calculated action over impulsive confrontation. And he felt the steady rhythm of satisfaction in seeing strategy manifest. Organically, outside, the late afternoon sun cast longer shadows across the neighborhood, the ordinary world continuing in its usual patterns while inside, the carefully orchestrated sequence of legal, financial, and observational steps created a ripple that no one present could immediately perceive, but which was already restructuring expectations and confidence. Caleb's calm gaze moved across the room, noting how every element, the folded notes, the scanned receipts, the account protections, the attorney's confirmations, interacted with the environment to produce a result as certain as it was invisible. And he appreciated the power of subtlety, timing, and preparation, understanding that the true weight of influence often comes from restraint and strategic patience. Victoria shifted slightly, finally speaking, her tone hesitant. I do not understand. And Caleb only met her gaze evenly, letting the moment demonstrate that control, clarity, and preparedness communicate more effectively than emotion ever could. While the room held its quiet tension, the ordinary sounds of the home contrasting with the extraordinary clarity of the situation, reinforcing that every action, though unseen until now, had positioned him decisively without a single dramatic gesture. By the early evening, the house had settled into a quiet rhythm, the warm glow of the Christmas lights reflecting softly off the polished wood surfaces and casting long, gentle shadows across the living room. Caleb Turner remained at his desk, reviewing the final sequence of actions. The scanned documents and account protections aligned perfectly with the timing of Victoria Turner's absence and the notifications already sent through the attorney, and he allowed the ordinary sounds of the home, the soft shuffle of the dogs on the rug, the faint hum of the heater, and the distant murmur of Victoria's family, to contrast with the extraordinary precision of his preparation, knowing that the first visible effects had already begun to take shape in ways she could not yet perceive. He sipped his water slowly, appreciating the cool liquid anchoring his hands while his mind traced each step in the process, confirming that the sequence of account freezes, legal notices, and documentation would continue to unfold silently but decisively, shifting the perception of control from Victoria to himself without confrontation, drama, or visible effort. And he noted with satisfaction how each detail had been timed to ensure maximum clarity and effect. The living room appeared ordinary, cozy even, with the scent of pine and faint aroma of holiday baking lingering in the air. But the underlying structure of evidence, careful observation, and calculated timing created a tension that only Caleb could perceive, a silent orchestration that transformed preparation into undeniable influence. Victoria moved briefly through the room, pausing to adjust a decoration and glance toward the desk, her expression subtly registering the shift in atmosphere. And Caleb observed without emotion, noting the hesitation and slight confusion that now edged her confident demeanor, the precise result of months of patient attention, record-keeping, and strategic foresight. Outside, the neighborhood continued its evening routines, car headlights glinting on driveways, children playing briefly on the sidewalks, and neighbors walking past. Houses with ordinary holiday lights, all oblivious to the quiet transformation taking place inside Caleb's home, where preparation and timing had created the conditions for clarity, control, and consequence without a single raised voice. He leaned back in his chair, letting the rhythm of the room, the alignment of the documents, and the calculated silence reinforce the steady knowledge that every action, though unseen, had been placed to produce an inevitable outcome, and that when Victoria and her family fully perceived the sequence of moves, the balance of perception and power would shift entirely, revealing the quiet effectiveness of patience, observation, and strategic planning. Caleb allowed the soft light to play across the documents one last time, appreciating the calm before the next subtle effect became visible, knowing that the ordinary sounds, the serene environment, and the ongoing holiday scene provided the perfect cover for the extraordinary precision of his actions, and that the unfolding of this carefully prepared plan would demonstrate clarity, influence, and control without drama, spectacle, or confrontation, leaving him fully in command of the situation as the evening deepened. By the time the evening settled fully over the house, the Christmas lights no longer felt festive to Caleb Turner. They glowed softly along the tree, reflecting in the window glass, turning the room into a picture of warmth that no longer matched the truth inside it. Victoria Turner stood near the dining table with her phone in one hand, reading the message again, while her family waited behind her in a silence that had replaced their cheering. That was the strange thing about confidence. It could fill a room in the morning and disappear before dinner when it finally met preparation. Caleb did not enjoy their discomfort. That mattered to him. He had not spent months organizing documents, checking accounts, and saving records because he wanted a scene. He had done it because somewhere beneath the polite smiles and holiday decorations, he had felt the ground shifting and decided not to be buried by surprise. Melissa Grant's final message came through at 7:42. Everything was received, filed, and secured. Caleb read it once, then placed his phone face down on the desk. The simple weight of those words gave him more peace than any argument ever could. Victoria looked at him differently now, not with triumph, not with that bright confidence from earlier, but with the uneasy awareness of someone who had mistaken kindness for weakness. Her mother finally asked, in a small voice, "What happens now?" Caleb looked toward the tree, at the silver star they had bought years ago, and for a moment he remembered carrying it through a crowded store while Victoria laughed because glitter kept falling on his coat. The memory was gentle. That was what made it hurt. But pain did not mean he had to surrender his dignity. He turned back and said, "Now everything goes through the attorneys. Calmly, properly, exactly the way it should have from the beginning." No one cheered that time. No one laughed. The room absorbed the sentence and held it like cold air. Later, when the guests began leaving, coats pulled tight and voices lowered, Caleb stood by the front window and watched taillights fade down the quiet street. Snow had started again, thin and slow, dusting the porch rail and the driveway. The house behind him was still the same house, but he was not the same man who had opened that envelope hours earlier. Something had ended, yes, but something cleaner had begun. A life without begging to be respected. A future built on boundaries instead of hope alone. He turned off the dining room light, leaving only the tree glowing in the corner, and for the first time all day, he breathed without carrying everyone else's expectations on his chest. So after seeing Caleb's choice, what would you have done in his place? Would you have argued in front of everyone? Or would you have let preparation speak louder than humiliation? If this story made you think about loyalty, dignity, and the quiet strength of a person who refuses to be underestimated, stay with this channel, because the most powerful endings often begin with one calm decision.